And I'll hear an adult say, don't spin, you're going to get dizzy. Or get down from that rock, you're going to get hurt. When we keep them from moving in those different ways, then we become the barrier to that neurological development that naturally happens.
Hi, this is Rusty Keeler, and you're listening to the Play Nature Podcast, where we talk about play, nature, playing in nature, and the nature of play. I'm glad you're here. Let's have a listen. Hi, Angela.
Hi, Rusty.
How are you?
I'm doing great.
Yeah, great to see you. I've been looking forward to our chat here, and I'm really glad today's the day. I'll read your bio here. We'll start off. Angela Hanscom is a pediatric occupational therapist and founder of TimberNook, an award-winning developmental and nature-based program that has gained international popularity. She is the author of Balanced and Barefoot, How Unrestricted Outdoor Play Makes for Strong, Confident, and Capable Children. Hanscom is also a frequent contributor to the Washington Post, and in 2019 won the Small Business of the Year award for the state of New Hampshire. Yay.
Yay.
Yeah, TimberNook.
Yes.
Okay. I love it. Well, so, these states like Vermont, New Hampshire, all these beautiful mountainous places, and I love the idea that they would pick like outdoor play and nature.
Yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
award. Yeah, well, could you start off just, you're an occupational therapist, and
Mhm.
could you just explain, yeah, what that is, and so where you're coming at it, all
Yeah,
this
of
from?
course. Yeah, so my undergrad degree is actually like kinesiology, so the study of movement. And then my master's is in occupational therapy. And, I always try to explain it in this way that, the main occupation of a child is play. And, it's also school. And so you'll hear a lot of occupational therapists working in school settings to get kids as independent as possible and as successful as possible with the occupation of school and academics, but play is also a really important occupation. And specifically for me, I really started to pay attention to outdoor play. And this was, TimberNook started to become a thing around 15 years ago. And I was really just paying attention to my surroundings and this rise of sensory issues in children. We usually work indoors, actually, as occupational therapists. We're not often outdoors. So that was very non-traditional for us. We work in clinics and we'll bring a little box of sand inside and call that sensory. We bring our swings inside. Everything's indoors, and we're supposed to be sensory experts treating issues like not wanting to get dirty, balance issues. Kids and, starting to become more and more clumsy is an issue that we're starting to see, being able to process auditory processing, like responding to your name. So, like, if you're like Tommy, 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 and they finally register that you said their name. A doctor might refer to an occupational therapist if a child has trouble paying attention in school. That all those sorts of things. And so for me, I started seeing kids not even want wind in their face in a clinic setting. And being in that setting, I remember thinking, how do I treat that indoors? Like, do I get a fan and blow the wind, the fan on the child?
Right, right.
Like, yeah. And a lot of kids didn't want glue on their fingers. They didn't want to get messy. But the number one issue is that kids were, starting to have trouble with knowing where their body was in space. Like they were falling out of their chairs in school. And so I really started paying attention, and that occupation of outdoor play is incredibly meaningful to most of us. So if, a lot of us talk about some of our most meaningful memories was playing outdoors, but that particular occupation is at risk and it's really affecting child development in ways we never expected. And so that's kind of the mission behind TimberNook, is to restore authentic occupation of outdoor play and to make it as real as possible. And to
Hmm.
me, it's probably 10 times more therapeutic than what I can do in a clinic setting with a child.
I wonder if we back up just a little bit, and I want to talk just about play itself
Yeah.
from your point of view, and outdoor play, but also, I call this the Play Nature podcast because we talk about play and nature, playing in nature and nature, but also the nature of play. Like,
Mhm.
what is that in child development? Like, what is childhood? Like, I'm fascinated by, like, to hear from you, like, what is going on in the developmental sweep of growth and becoming, a person, I guess. But and
Mhm.
how play, where's play in
Yeah, well, play is, it's actually the way that when we work with a child, we use play as the medium of treatment. Like, so everything that we do with the children in treatment is all through play. And so if someone sat in on a clinic session, they would be like, "What are you doing? You're just playing with the child." But we use it as a medium. But for me, it's bigger than that. It's like, what is incredibly meaningful to a child? So play is where they learn social emotional skills. It's where they learn to come up with their own ideas and execute those play schemes. It's where they learn to be mentally flexible with other children's ideas out there. It's pretty complex and beautiful at the same time, and it brings purpose and joy and meaning to children's lives. So, yeah, I think it's pretty transformative for children when we allow plenty of time for play, not just little snippets.
there? Right, right, for sure. So I've heard you talk about, like, I almost think of it as like different as the child ages, like different things coming online as physically what's going on in their body, like from eyes to bones to joints to all the senses. But what is that like? Like, what do children need?
Yeah, so to break it down on a deeper level, here's just one thing to think about is when you play, especially outdoors, one of the things that children need more than anything is to move in pretty vigorous ways. They need to roll down the hills, they need to climb trees, they need to jump off things. And the reason why is because inside their inner ear are little hair cells, and there's fluid in there, and when we move in rapid ways, so like I'm talking spinning in circles, like that kind of rapid movement,
Okay.
that moves the fluid back and forth and stimulates those hair cells. And what that does is it develops your vestibular sense. And that particular sense is key to all the other senses. We call it the unifying sense for sensory integration.
Huh.
So sensory integration is kind of like organization of the brain so they can learn and pay attention in the classroom. And what's happening is a lot of kids are being overly restricted. So they're sitting for the most recent research I sat in on is that they're in a chair for about 9 hours a day. So a lot of kids in elementary age especially are being driven to school, being driven home from school, sitting for hours. They might have like little go noodle breaks, like those little movement breaks. They might have a 20-minute recess session, but then even afterwards, a lot of these kids are sitting for homework or they're overscheduled. And they're in this constantly this upright position, being very much restricted. And so what we're seeing is a lot of kids are really walking around with this underdeveloped vestibular sense. It's not quite where it should be. And what it does is it affects a couple different things. One is that it helps you know where your body is in space. So it helps you get from point A to point B safely on and off playground equipment effectively, and to be able to stay in your seat without falling out. So now teachers are reporting kids are literally falling out of their chairs and onto the ground a couple times a day. So like this is, becoming a real issue. And the way we treat that in a clinic setting is therapists will put children on a swing and spin them in all different ways. And we actually will position them on their side, on their back, in different positions and spin them. An example of this is we have a OT that worked very closely with NASA. And because before astronauts go into outer space, they get into a machine that moves them in all different directions. So when they go into an anti-gravity environment, they have a really good sense of body awareness when navigating. And so we do the same. We have this spinning board that we also use called the astronaut board, and we will spin children on that board so they have good body awareness. Now, sometimes I will see a child that's spinning in circles to get dizzy, right? We used to just
Yeah.
grow up, we would spin and then
Yeah.
get like fall and then get back up and spin again. And I'll
Yeah.
hear an adult say, "Don't spin, you're going to get dizzy." Or get down from that rock, you're going to get hurt. But what's really interesting is that actually helps them to become more aware of where their body is in space and become actually safer when navigating their environment. So when we keep them from moving in those different ways, then we become the barrier to that neurological development that naturally happens. So that's just one example of a system that's being not developed properly because kids are not moving enough.
That is so interesting. Back when children were less sedentary, they're moving all over the place, right? I mean, that's how the children naturally moving and jumping and running and doing all and spinning and all that kind of stuff. So it's like the body gets to know itself because of that
Yeah,
in the natural way. Gosh, it's fascinating that you would with that board that you're spinning it, and it's almost like you're helping the child's system, but it's like they don't have to do it. They're not doing anything to do that, lifting weights or reading things. It's like
yeah.
you're just doing the system that is built into our bodies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because Zoe Millix is a researcher in the world of occupational therapy and worked very closely with Jean Ayres, who was brought the whole term sensory integration to the forefront. And I've, met with her, spoken, she's come and talked to our group, and she said that babies, if they're full term, that system is fully functioning. So they did testing to see if it's fully functioning. It's not like vision when a baby's first born. They see in black and white and it takes time to develop. That vestibular sense is fully there. However, if you take that baby and you keep them upright and you're not letting them move enough, and you
Oh,
put them in a container and then another container, then right away that fluid in the inner ear can thicken and you can start to have ear infections at an early age. They start to not know where their body is in space. And so you get issues from a very early age when you're overprotecting kids and not letting them move enough too.
because they need to do
Yeah.
that. And very ironic that it's like, oh, people would be protecting and keeping it perfect and or worried about necks and but
Yeah.
they need to be wobbling and moving,
Right. Absolutely.
bumping around. Gosh, it's also interesting that that's in the womb, that all the moving around and
Yeah. They're
sloshing in the
right. They're
when the
moving. Exactly. Yes.
okay, so then more about like the sensory, yeah, integration. Like what else is going on in the
So
system?
another one that's really being affected is the proprioceptive sense, and that's the senses in the joints and muscles. You'll hear occupational therapists talk about the importance of heavy work. So push-pull resistance movements. And that helps develop, a sense of where their limbs are in relation to each other. So, like a different kind of body sense. But it also helps a child to know how much force to use when playing games like tag without hitting too hard, or pick up a frog and not squeeze the frog or the frog. Like sometimes we see that TimberNook where they're like squeezing the frogs and we're having to rescue them. So that develops through a lot of heavy work. And if you watch outdoor play, especially with loose parts, right? Like where they pick up a big pallet and they're moving it all the way across the woods on uneven terrain. It's heavy work and they're building those forts. So that's giving nice resistance to the joints and muscles. And again, that helps them to know where their limbs are in relation to each other and how much force to use when playing games like tag. And now we're starting to ban tag in schools because kids are getting, quote, more aggressive and hitting harder. But instead of banning things, we should really understand, why is this happening in the first place? Why are all these kids presenting with these interesting sensory issues? But through outdoor play, they're getting a lot of heavy work naturally without having to carry around weighted vests or just heavy backpacks. They're getting heavy
Right.
digging in the
Oh,
dirt. Yeah.
well, that's interesting, right? It's just natural. It's natural through the play,
Yeah.
as and it's therapeutic. Like the the heavy vests are therapeutic, but
Hmm.
the natural play is the therapeutic or the way that we
Yeah.
naturally go online.
If you think about it, if kids are not getting enough of it, so a lot of kids aren't. They're just not, playing with loose parts that much. They go home and sometimes they're on electronics and you're not getting resistance to the joints and muscles with that. So you're pushing buttons, but you're not getting that push pull. So that sense will be affected if they're not getting enough of that.
So then, if they don't have that,
Mm.
it comes out as looking aggressive because they don't
Yeah.
know their limits,
Oh
or
yeah.
what else? Yeah, what?
Yeah, and then they might jump on another kid or they might like want a big hug. They're just much more like rough and tumble, like a bull in a china shop type thing. And that push pull type of experience is also very grounding and helps them to be able to pay attention and calm down as well.
Gosh, it's so interesting that, okay, so if there's more, if we see this more aggression, and it's because they didn't get the opportunity for heavy work and big work and or that physicality, that's
Mm.
actually what they need the most. But busy adults or administrators or principals or recess aides see the behavior and they want to stop it,
Yes.
but it's actually that's what they need to help the behavior.
Yeah. And it's what we do in therapy. Like we're literally like watching kids play at TimberNook. What I learned is like this is tenfold. That what they're doing out here, I could not replicate in a clinic setting. It's just a very small piece of it. So, yeah. And it's self-directed play, right? It's meaningful to them, and that's, yeah, even more important.
Yeah. Let's see. So many different things.
Yeah.
I want to ask you. I guess, it's like so you used to see occupational therapists, physical therapists see children that need some help and assistance and for their lives. And that's always been that great profession and supporting
Mhm.
children and families that way. And there will always be, there were children that maybe didn't have that kind of integration. But you're seeing it more on a mass scale
Yeah.
now that
Yeah.
childhood is different? Well, how would you
Yeah.
describe that? Or what's the difference between like a 20 years ago with occupational therapy, would you say, and now? Or
Yeah, actually, that's a really great question. So, when I was growing up in the early 80s, it was pretty rare for a child to need occupational therapy. It was more reserved for children with more severe disabilities like cerebral palsy, that sort of thing. And then the last, I would say 15, 20 years, there's been a significant rise in the need for occupational therapy. Like, so I remember working at a clinic setting where we had a wait list that went out at least a year. We couldn't even get to the children.
wow,
So if you talk to occupational therapists, they're overworked and we're very limited with the amount of time we can see a child. It might be half an hour. And what are you going to do in half an hour with a
yeah,
child?
yeah,
But the big, I see one of the biggest issues is the environment. Like what we have expected of children is really inappropriate. You just talked with Peter Gray. I spent 3 days with him. We were doing a talk together, but we ended up taking a plane there and back together.
oh yeah,
But he even calls it like child abuse. Like a lot of times, like in
right,
the school, like what we're expecting of children is incredibly restrictive. And so the environment is really making things worse. And like one just small example of that from my perspective is the amount of transitions that we expect a child to go through in a school day. So a lot of times children with sensory issues have a really hard time with transitioning. And so you'll start to see a lot of behaviors and they'll act up when it's time to switch gears. And if you think about school, it's like every 45 minutes to an hour, it's like switch, switch, switch. And so it's very dysregulating and disorganizing to their neurological systems to do that. And so for at TimberNook, like what we do is we allow for lots of time. Like the shortest program we have is 2 hours. So
yeah,
when TimberNook goes into a school, it's at least 2 hours because it takes time, first of all, to figure out who am I going to play with, what am I going to play, and then dive deep into that play scheme. And then, it takes a lot of time for them to just like come down from their arousal level. Like kids are always off the wall type thing, but to naturally bring that back down, it takes a good 45 minutes to an hour for that, just for them just to be regulated so they can pay attention. And the complex play schemes is where all the life skills come from, right? Like, solving their own problems, conflict resolution, like all that stuff. It just takes a lot more time than we expect. And so in school, they're not getting that. And here we are doing like social skill groups. Like, so speech therapists will do these, and sometimes occupational therapists will do social skill groups where they role play how to socially interact with other people. And like for me, I'm like, just get them playing in a real
uh-huh,
environment where they're learning it in a real it's a real world situation. And so those skills will generalize over into other real world situations better as well.
yeah. So living it,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
So in your path, you started noticing this in the clinical
Yeah.
setting, and then thinking about, it sounds like you were like, okay, how do I bring in some outdoor things into this, into the inside? But then where did the light bulb go off? How did you start, I guess, the TimberNook story? What is TimberNook? How did you get the initial idea? And then, I mean, it's really taken off. And
Yeah, so I just paying attention, like I said. And then I have two older daughters and then a son that's 9. My oldest is 20 and my other daughter's 17. And
okay.
so when my 17-year-old was a baby, I actually decided to stay home and I was like, I'm not working anymore. I
Yeah.
never wanted to be a manager of anything, by the way. Like I don't like to be in the limelight. So my dream was to be an occupational therapist, stay home with my children as long as possible, and then maybe I'd go back to work. But what happened was I was starting to notice all these sensory issues, and then I stayed home with my children and I joined a mom's group because that was kind of the thing to do at the time. And
Hmm.
I had people asking me questions like, why is my child spinning in circles all the time? Or why is my child having trouble paying attention in preschool? You're an occupational therapist, like you should have answers for this. And so like it just thought they were interesting questions. And then my daughter went to kindergarten, and I remember the teacher meeting with us ahead of time, and she said, "This is not kindergarten like you remember growing up." She's like, "It's going to be more like first grade."
Right.
She said,
Right.
"We don't have time to cut with scissors." She says, "We don't have time to teach your children how to tie their shoes. Recess will be 15 minutes, and if it snows, it will be indoors." This whole theme of no time for developmental skills kept popping up. Long story short, I thought I was going to run nature classes because I around that time noticed there was not a lot of kids playing outside. I just remember thinking, where are they? Why are they not playing
Yeah.
outside?
Yeah.
And so I ran a nature class and until basically a parent come up to me and said, "Can you tell my son why the leaves change color?" And I was like, "I don't know." Like I was trying to remember from my science classes because I'm not an environmentalist or a naturalist. And I was like, I honestly don't. I think it has something to do with the pigment in the leaf. And but it just helped me reflect on what is my background, what am I doing here? And that's when I really started to think, what does an occupational therapist have anything to do with nature programming? And that's when I really started to realize that, the main occupation of a child is play. And then basically I had a friend in marketing and she said, "I think you should run summer camps because I think you're more likely to get kids to sign up and parents to drop off." And I was like, "Oh, I'm not trained to do that." Like, usually we work one-on-one with the child or small groups of kids. Occupational therapists don't run huge groups. We're not teachers either. So I had no idea what I was getting into. And I said, "I'll run 1 week of summer camp." And she was like, "You have to do 3 to market yourself." And I was like, "All right, fine." So I did 3 weeks of summer camp. And I went to
Okay.
the University of New Hampshire and I got OT students to volunteer and help out because I
Okay.
thought, what a cool opportunity for them to see nature for its
Hmm.
therapeutic value. And so I had 4
Right.
volunteers and I
Nice.
essentially was running it by myself with some helpers. And by the end of the 3 weeks, I was exhausted. It felt like I was putting on a giant birthday party every day.
Oh yeah.
So, so by the end of it, I was like, I'm never doing this again. That was like crazy and I was exhausted. But something told me to just see what happens. And what happened was those 4 volunteers went back to university and I had 14 volunteers the next year.
Oh
And
man.
I had an OT reach out and a physical therapist asking, can we replicate your program? This is unique for our profession. No one's doing this. And that's when I realized this had nothing to do with me. It was really a gift I was supposed to share. And I had no business experience. So I went to seek out a business mentor. Ended up getting 2 that really
Okay.
were higher level business people. And they really helped me to license a program. And we created TimberNook. And TimberNook represents timber is within the trees. And a nook or cranny is a hidden place away from the adult world and the fears of the adult world where kids can be kids. And so that's where the name came from.
Love it.
And
Yeah.
yeah, and then
Yeah.
yeah, my plan was just to market in New England because that's we're in New Hampshire. And
Yeah.
what happened was I wrote an article called Why Kids Fidget, and that went incredibly viral. And then it
Mm.
got picked up by the Washington Post, and that's how I started writing for the Washington Post, and those started exploding. And it led to
Okay.
the TED Talks and the book, and that's how TimberNook went to Australia and UK and Canada and throughout the US.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Suddenly, you hit a nerve
Yeah,
uh,
yeah,
worldwide where
right,
this is an issue where children, their mobility or how they're growing up, or where compared to the old days or how we were naturally made to
right.
grow up in nature or outdoors or in groups or with other kids and all this. Gosh. Okay, so yeah, you were like putting it out there right at the time when people are like, what do we do, and how can we help this? We're
Yeah,
recognizing it.
yeah, it's clearly a need out there. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, just this year through some of my travels, I had all these TimberNook. I didn't quite grasp the concept at first because I was like, "Oh, you're from TimberNook," and I'm in North Carolina, or I was in TimberNook. I can't remember, it was Oregon or somewhere else. It was like TimberNook, and I was like, "Well, wait a second, what?" It's all over.
Yeah.
Well, okay, so what is it that a TimberNook experience? Yeah, the sensational experience.
Yeah, yeah. So basically, what it is it's different play experiences. Yeah. So an example might be they might hear the story Three Little Pigs, and this is little kids, like we do all the way up to teenagers, right? But
Okay.
little kids might, in mixed ages, so it might be ages 4 to 9 out there for this one. They might hear the story Three Little Pigs, and then out there would be, real bales of hay, real sticks, bricks. There might be wolf masks, milk crates, pulleys, ropes, and then they have the opportunity to create their own three little pig homes. And whether they do that or not is their choice, but the environment is, we call it staging. So it's a little different. It's specific to Timbernook, but there's an art form of staging the environment to inspire play. And so the adults can't say anything. We can't be like, this is for this. Like it's staged. And
Mm.
so whether they do that or not, they might create wolf clans. It's up to them, but it's inspiration because a lot of kids don't have practice. So they don't have any springboard to start with. So it's really helpful for that. Another one might be they might have the opportunity to create a giant ball run. So there might be gutters out there, corrugated tubing, balls of different sizes, ropes, pulleys, and then it might be a field trip coming out doing that. And the environment is staged. There might be a story, and then they're left to design. And again, there's like at least 2 hours where they dive into it. Might be Roxaboxen. They hear the story Roxaboxen. There might be like
Mhm.
flags out there, stuff that has anything to do with face paint, like stuff. And then you see clan play happen because, that's very natural out there. Yeah.
So, what are the sites? Like, what was the first site that you went to for the summer camp, and then how did that expand? And then where are other people's TimberNook sites? What are they using? And yeah, who's coming to it? It's more group work or versus yeah.
Yeah. So it's a program. It's a licensed program. And so even schools can get certified in Timbernook. We have about 10 schools that do it. They're all mostly private schools. And the original site is in Barrington, and that's where we train people. They come out to our location to train. But we have about 12 acres here, and there's 2 acres of woodland that they actually span on. So it's big, giant boulder. New England is known for its boulders. There's giant boulders
Nice.
out
Yeah,
there,
yeah.
trees, like woodland. It's very much New
Hmm.
England like. But yeah, we have some in Australia, UK. We just launched one in Hawaii this past year, which is super cool. Their trees are closer to the ground, so they can climb, build their forts in the trees, which is really cool. But yeah, you still see him play Timbernook, and very similar play schemes out there. It's just the environments are a little bit different depending on where in the world you're at. So,
Yeah, yeah. So are is this like after school
oh,
time?
so it
What?
comes in the form of summer camps. We have night experiences. We just did one for teenagers where it was a glow in the dark warrior
Uh,
night where they like had a battle out there. We have toddlers that come with parents. They have 2 hours of Timbernook play experience, inspire play out there. We're really trying to teach adults to step back a lot. It's very non-traditional, especially field trips. We have field trips. Schools come out where we're
mm,
really pulling the teachers back and trying to train them on the importance of play and, not being so close to the kids because it really, when the adults are too close to children, it interferes with the play significantly and they start seeking constant adult reassurance. And yeah, we do homeschool programming year round. It could be under the umbrella of forest school, but it's a very specific approach and method. every TimberNook site follows the same recipe and flow of the day to reduce transitions, all that stuff. Very minimal intervention from an adult, I guess.
Yeah, you use the word unrestricted.
Yeah.
So what? Tell me about that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so unrestricted was a term that we came up with, especially for the book, means like not saying unstructured because like children will structure their own play and come up with their own rules, but it's like less boundaries from adults, like don't do this or be careful about that type thing. But what I'm kind of talking about is we use the phrase a lot of step back, but tune in out there. So like the adults
Mm.
will like step back at least 10, 20 feet and actually find a seat. Like we have cushions out there because we have to reduce adult presence in order to empower the children to play on their own. We want independent play. Like that's pretty
Yeah.
much the goal of TimberNook is we want independent creative play. And in order for that to happen, the adults have to get out of the way. Now there's times where adults actually do need to go in, and it's really important that they go in. And it's usually has to do with safety, like, something incredibly unsafe or unreasonable or like so we're constantly assessing, and this is part of our training is like when do you go in and when do you not go in and when do you just like say a phrase or yeah, that kind of thing.
Love it. Okay, so the TimberNook staff is, well versed in all that. How, so you're also teaching the adults
Hmm.
who come with the kids,
Yeah.
or by the action, or step back and tune in?
Yeah, so for especially for schools, this is like really key of having them step back right away, and you can know which teacher. I'm usually going after the teachers that go right in, like so, like
Yeah.
if they're billing for it, you see those teachers running after them. Like we do talk to them ahead of time too, but it's one thing to say we want you to step back and we are not allowed to give ideas to the kids. Like that's our number one rules. Like you cannot give them an idea of how to play out there. They're not allowed to. And they're not allowed to play with children. And that may be a little different than some other play work is we're not allowed to play with the children. We can go like quickly look and stuff, but we're really trying to empower them to play with each other. And so we actually won't have any influence over that. So we do have to go in and pull the teachers back and try to get them to observe. Like, okay, what are we looking at here? What are some of the benefits of the play that we're seeing out in the woods right now? And how does this relate to the classroom? Because, a lot of times teachers will be looking at it through an academic lens. And so we're trying to get them to think a little bit deeper on what they're actually seeing. And as an occupational therapist, we're skilled we do these things called an activity analysis. So we can take any activity and analyze it for its therapeutic benefit. So that's what, like, so I'm trying to explain, like, look at how that child is picking up that heavy log. That's, helping with this. And, he's now listening to someone else's idea. He didn't get what he wanted, but let's see how he responds. Like, so we're talking about all aspects of development from social skills to, regulation of emotions and all that stuff. So there's a lot of stuff going on out there.
Yeah, right. It's all happening.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, amazing to think like, okay, you've created this space, this container where they can be in nature, full sensory experiences, but then also with other children, which is, both collaboration and communication, but then also there can be conflict, but then a conflict resolution, or, this opportunity for it, where if versus and in the woods, but versus school and sitting in the upright, or you said in the cars to home, or home to screens, or gosh, yeah. So you're like creating this opportunity that maybe children just used to roam around, or in the streets or vacant lots, and in the woods and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
Is there still occupational therapy going on, or is this like you're like, oh no, actually we're creating something so that there doesn't need to be formal, like what we think of as occupational therapy?
Yeah. Well, it's kind of a controversial like topic actually because
Okay,
I
okay.
think that depending on who you talk to, some will say this is a form of occupational therapy, some say it's not. I would It's kind of like one of those things. To me, this is authentic occupation. And so it's kind of like the holy grail of occupational therapy. So it's like you're bringing in authentic occupation, like you said, a container into school environments, into communities, and you're creating a safe place for them and permission to do things that they wouldn't normally be able to do on their own. And so to me, it's incredibly therapeutic and rich. So whether you call it occupational therapy, it's just not traditional occupational therapy to me, but I do believe it falls within the realm of the world of
Sure.
occupational therapy.
Sure.
We are,
It's like
yeah.
the
Uh,
goals, like you're reaching the goals of
yeah.
any
It,
occupational therapist.
yes, it's working on all things that other occupational therapists, let's say, so we do have a lot of kids out there that go and get occupational therapy and work on specific goals, but then they come to
Okay.
TimberNook and it's working on some of those areas that they probably can't get in a clinic setting. Like especially like regulation of emotions, like that's best done through play. Like it's very hard to treat that in a clinic setting. Like you can try to
Uh-huh.
frustrate them, but there's nothing like the real thing when
Oh,
someone takes
gosh.
takes your supply that you're using, or
Yeah.
like you have to experience it in the real world for it to actually improve. Going barefoot in giant mud puddles. Like I've seen kids like not want to go barefoot. I had a kid say, I know we're going to the mud puddles, but I'm not taking my boots off. And so I remember this one particular kid, I said, sure, okay. So we went down and other kids were catching frogs. And he was like clearly wanting to go in. So he went in and got mud in his welly boots, which, he had socks on, which feels gross. So he came back out and he's like, this is disgusting. Can I take this off? And I'm like, sure. So he took them off, went back in and caught frogs. And we showed the mom video from it. I didn't realize this, but he had been seeing a therapist for 2 years trying to get him to go barefoot. Unsuccessful. And here he was in giant mud puddles, barefoot, and what was really interesting is it was a real environment that play trumped his fear. So it was his choice. Because if I had said, no, I think you should try to take your shoes off, you know, you, he'd probably
Right.
be, yeah,
Yeah.
that control piece. But because it was a choice, and true play is a choice,
Yeah.
he was able to decide that for himself. And then he started going barefoot camping. So it was a real environment. And then he started translating that to other real environments. Versus in a clinic setting, if you walk on a plastic balance beam with pickies on it, like, doesn't necessarily mean you're all of a sudden going to go barefoot on a rug. Never mind the dirt. It's a fabricated sensory experience.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
not
Right.
real
Right.
life,
Yeah.
right? So it's not going to generalize over. But because it was meaningful in his choice, he was able to overcome that fear.
Wow. Yeah, because in that case, you want to be barefoot. You want to be in it. The play is leading you there. I always think of like the flow of
Yeah.
the play,
Yes.
and to have that time and the space and just to, yeah, want to do it versus adult led or adult wishing things would happen but from the inside when it comes from the inside,
Yeah.
which is how we always, the history of humans, like they were in it or they were having conflicts or, yeah,
Yeah.
cities or country, I guess.
And that piece is really key too, Rusty. So, like when kids have sensory issues, there's often anxiety tied to that. So, if you have this preconceived, we're going to walk on this balance beam right now, that
Yeah.
can actually rise the anxiety level in a child. But when you have what's a choice and you could just watch other kids do it and be happy, like that's where that anxiety piece comes in. They can help overcome it easy.
Right, right. I could see that where, yeah, it's like, oh, this adult wants me to do this thing, and it makes me, you're already nervous, and then I have to get on this balance beam, versus just, oh, we're running through the woods and around trees, and everyone else is barefoot, and I'm barefoot too, or I want to get in the creek, or
Hmm.
yeah, all that, the natural play. Wow, gosh, it's funny that we have to create it. Thank goodness we're creating it and doing it and bringing it back. And it's funny, like talking to Peter Gray. He's interested because he's fascinated by like all the changes in childhood, and then how children like find their way even like through screens to still have social connection and that kind of play and autonomy and that stuff. And more like fascinated, like, oh, it's very, very different. But then I feel like we're kind of like, yes, but kids need to be in the dirt when they still need, we need this stuff, and how to provide that.
Yes.
And even I think I've heard you hint at, like, this is also like the deep connection, soul and the earth and the beauty of life, really.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and you find your sense of purpose, you know?
But yeah, how about that? What also you're providing that, I mean, like that sense of wonder for children, or the deeper connection that you're providing.
Yeah.
How do you
Yeah.
look at that?
Well, I mean, I think of it as God's creation. And so like being out there as like really important and like just even being able to think. I one time was volunteering at my kid's school to be, like some health person, like some health class for them. And I remember giving them assignment of like no phones, no electronics for a day. And a girl said to me, this was middle school, and she's like, I'm afraid to be alone with my own thoughts for a day. And I was like, what? Like, so that was a pretty profound statement, is like, I'm
Mm,
afraid to be alone with my own thoughts. And like for me, like, and for the children, like, there's times where their play can look very different. There's a lot of like adventure play and, conflict play. They get thrilling play out there, but there's times where kids are just sitting there watching other people, totally content, or wandering around, and like that, just being, present is
yeah.
really, I think, really fundamental, and we forget about that. We always want them doing something. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
right, right.
Mhm.
Huh. Yeah, I think of like being, the
Yeah.
idea of just letting children be.
Yeah, exactly.
And then what happens?
Another quick story is my daughter, who's 20, grew up doing TimberNook, and she wrote a piece for Children Nature Network, and then was on 1,000 Hours Outside podcast.
Mm,
And she was really noticing differences when she got to high school of growing up the timber, like, and creating societies out there and having wars and having to defend territories, and how it really made her like strong sense of self, and
mm,
confident, and being like, I'm not like, and setting boundaries with other children, like, no, that's not okay. Like, we're not, and not being afraid to do so. That really helped her in high school to not be part of the crowd or always doing what everyone else was doing. And I think that's really important too, is like really knowing a strong sense of who you are as a person. A lot of times happens through play, and you develop that through different play schemes and what you like and what you don't like. And a lot of these kids nowadays, like she'll talk about them as being like almost clones of each other. Like there's not a lot of, and a lot of them are lonely or bored, or they don't have very adventurous lives. And so I think that's also something to pay attention to.
gosh, yeah, like you develop a sense of self
Yeah.
through that. Oh, who am I? What do I like to do? Where are my lines? Where are my boundaries?
Yeah.
I like that adventurous,
Yeah.
adventurous
Yeah.
childhood.
Yes.
Uh, did you have an adventurous childhood?
Yeah, I think probably not as much as my own kids.
Yeah.
Like, but yeah, I mean, I was played outside at all hours, went biking, and had a lot of autonomy. I had a lot of autonomy, and there was
Mm.
a lot of trust back then too.
Yeah, unrestricted.
Yeah, yeah, unrestricted. That's right.
Yeah, I mean that's the funny thing about the changes over the decade. Like I grew up that way, like
Hmm.
roam wherever. I had fields behind my house, but I could also get on a bike and go into town and mess around,
Yeah,
and that was normal. Everybody, that's what kids did. Like mostly you saw kids outside, maybe
yeah.
more than adults, or it was like their town. And it's just a funny thing
Mm.
seeing that change. And I think for me, I haven't wanted to believe it over years and years, like it's but even in places, in Ithaca, where it's very child friendly and pedestrian friendly, bike friendly and all that, but
Mm.
still, you don't kids aren't out and about for all those different reasons. But we need it, right? As humans, as
Oh yeah. And the other human aspect of this is that community out there helps shape the individual. Like, so
yeah.
that's huge. Like, so having those connections in person is very different than just the online stuff. And we saw that my last week at camp. There was a kid that does a lot of gaming, and is not usually put in situations where it's play, but feels really real. And then he almost like he couldn't make it was like too much for him. It was really interesting. So like I feel like we're doing a disservice by not allowing them like in-person opportunities to play too. Does that make sense?
Yeah, because it's however realistic the game can be.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's not full body, full sensory,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
gosh, but yeah, that could be overwhelming if you're just used to, I mean, very manageable. There it is in your lap,
Yeah.
looking at the
Yeah.
screen, and
Yeah. You want to turn the game off? You
right, right, I'm
want to
done.
deal with this
Yeah.
character.
The interactions are a certain way, right? They come
Yeah.
at you even if you're talking and stuff,
Yeah. Yeah.
but real life isn't that. Like
No.
real, I mean, or is it? Are we heading in that direction? And oh gosh, did you see that movie, Wall-E, the robot in the future, and he's picking stuff up,
I heard about it,
garbage?
but I didn't watch it.
Well, it's good, it's interesting, but it has this like humans in the future, like they've left Earth because it was too much
Yeah.
garbage and stuff. So, but they now are like floating around in these like hover chairs on their spaceship, and they have screens and everything, and they're all kind of flubby bubby, and that's just how they interact. Everything is through the screen, and they don't move their bodies. And but they didn't have TimberNook.
Yeah. That's
And people that want this, and
yeah.
that care about this stuff, and I think also the beauty of what you're doing is that it's, in one way, it's simple. Like
Mhm.
children are programmed to, they might need a little coaxing if they haven't done it, but ultimately, like, there's frogs and there's leaves and there's bugs under there, and you want to build that fort, or you want to, be the clan, and, it's like beautiful and playful and natural.
Yeah, absolutely.
Well, okay, so what would your final thought of, like, well, advice? Now, it's great when people can get to TimberNook and be a part of the awesome stuff happening there, but what could just parents and educators do, or early childhood people? Like, yeah, what is some of your top advice?
Yeah, so I think really just making sure to allow for plenty of time for outdoor play, and like just doing a little bit more, reading about it, whether that be my book or your book, or, like just, understanding the importance is really key, but and allowing them enough time. Like, so my kids, when they were little, they would have friends over for the entire day. So we didn't
Yeah.
do play dates for an hour. Like, it just it's hard to get into those advanced play schemes with a short period of time. So longer periods of time, having kids come over, really kick them out, like just I use like electronics as a special treat once in a while. Like it's like they watch a movie Friday nights was what my kids had. They had no phone till high school. Like
Mm-hmm.
and but they really were able to develop properly and have those experiences and have no regrets. Like and they learn that quickly later, And then as far as school goes, like I do think that we need to like play should be more a part of the way we educate children. I actually think it should be not just recess, but we should carve out time where they're really getting into some deep play to work on all those life skills, the stuff that they really are desperately needing now. So it's a more holistic approach.
I agree. Yay. Yes. Lots more. But I don't want to keep you forever. But it's so great chatting about all this stuff, and really inspiring, and how you've like TimberNook itself is this natural thing that's like growing and expanding,
Yeah.
and touching so many people. So thanks so much for doing what you're doing.
Yeah. Thank you
Yeah.
for having me, Rusty. It was a
Yeah.
pleasure.
All right. Thanks for listening. Do you have a comment or a question? Email me at playnaturepodcast@gmail.com. You know I like talking about this stuff. And maybe we could use your question on a future podcast episode. As always, I have some free goodies for you in the show notes, including my outdoor loose parts guide. Fun stuff in there. And so I wish you the best in your outdoor play adventures. And when it comes to adding nature to your yard, or loose parts, or saying yes to risky play. My favorite motto is dream big, start small, and never stop. Oh yeah. Woo, 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 woo. Let's do it. All right. Have fun out there.